Hi, I'm Eric, and I'm here to introduce you to C++ programming. This is a zero lesson, and that means I'm just going to talk about the big picture of this series. So let's get started. So my name is Eric, I'm a graduate student, and I study computational science and technology at Seoul National University in South Korea. A few years ago, I became very interested in modern C++ when I was teaching an Introduction to C++ Programming course, and I realized the C++11 standards made C++ a lot easier to learn, and it made it a lot easier to do more advanced and sophisticated things with as well. And since then, the C++ 14 and 17 standards have created new ways that we can really simplify our programs and make them a lot more efficient in a very simple way. And I like to tell people C++ is a conversation between the programmer, the computer, and the compiler, which builds our programs. So in this series, we're going to begin with the basics. We'll cover the basics of writing a program, understanding how C++ programs are actually built and created. We're going to use modern C++ to keep our programs as simple as possible. And we're going to cover some features that are common to C++, even if they aren't strictly the basics, but I think they'll make programming easier. To get started, what you need to do is you need a C++ compiler. I'm not going to talk about that here. So it should be easy to install. If you're on a Windows computer, Visual Studio should do that for you. And I don't use Windows, I use a Mac, so I hope the installation goes easy. If it doesn't, leave a comment or search the internet, and I hope someone can help you with that. If you're on a Mac, you are going to need to install Xcode. Even if you aren't using Xcode to develop, you do need it to access the compilers. I usually install Xcode on my Mac, and then from there, I install secondary compilers. On Linux, you need to download the GCC compiler, and I usually do this from whatever package managing system I'm using, like yum install GCC or apt-get install GCC, depending on what flavor of Linux you have. If you're using Linux, I hope you know how to install a compiler. Finally, if none of these solutions work, there are some online compilers. I believe there's a website called Tutorial Point. I don't have it listed here because I haven't checked it in a while. But at this tutorials point, you should be able to find online compilers. And finally, IDEs, the Integrated Development Environment. We'll talk more about these in depth later, but for now, just know that this IDE, it manages many of the technical details of making a program. So this means we can worry about all those details later. They are important, but I'm going to ignore them for now. For my IDE, I use something called CLion. If you use another, that's fine. We're just using basic C++, so any programming environment you have, that's going to work. So don't worry too much. Just make sure you have access to a compiler, and we can start from there. All right, so I'm going to move on to the first video where we make our first program. Thanks for watching.